February 1871, a detachment of Texas Rangers under the command of Sergeant Edward Cobb, 10 Rangers and 2 civilian volunteers, was on the trail of a band of Kiowa and Comanche raiders. They traveled 40 miles from Perryman Station before running into Indians on the border of Wise and Denton counties, Texas, near North Fork Hickory Creek. The Kiowa and Comanche decided to give the Rangers a fight. The Texans were on the hill, the Indians were on the low. They are about 600 yards apart. Tired Rangers crowded around the sergeant and waited for his orders. The Indians lined up for battle and shouted insults at the Texans in obscene slang of Spanish, broken English and their own languages. Sergeant Cobb, a veteran of the Confederate Army, fought in the army of Stonewall Jackson, was considering options. During the chase, he lost one fighter. The Kiowa and Comanche detachment numbered 41 warriors. That is, a numerical ratio of 4 to 1 in favor of the Native Americans, many of them armed with old single-shot rifles. In addition, he saw an Indian scout drive up a nearby hill and apparently found out that help was not approaching the Texans. On the other hand, the sergeant could not retreat, because then the Indian raiders would continue to attack the ranches and post stations and, anyway, would have to chase them. We had to fight. Cobb sent one of the civilian volunteers for reinforcements. He handed out additional ammunition to the Rangers, calmly told them to tighten their girths, check their weapons. Then he ordered them to go down the hill to the bushy banks of a shallow stream bed. It was a good position. Indian warriors tried to shake the Rangers with short trial attacks, but to no avail. They moved up the slope to where the wide prairie began. Cobb, feeling that the initiative was on his side, led his men further from the stream towards the enemy. Most of the Rangers were armed with powerful single-shot 50 caliber sharp carbines, but there were some of the newer, quick-firing Model 1866 Winchesters. The U.S. Department of Defense could not stand excessively independent Texas Rangers, and did not want to issue new weapons to them. But for Cobb's company, an unexpected exception was made. Winchester decided the outcome of the fight. 13 rounds of .44 caliber in a tubular magazine. With the exception of Sergeant Cobb and his combat friend William Carruthers, none of the Rangers ever saw combat, and the youngest man on the patrol was barely 16 years old. But youth was also a problem on the part of the Kiowas and Comanches. They were led by young chiefs Satank and Oscahorse, sons of prominent Kiowa and Comanche chiefs. As the Rangers approached within firing range, Cobb yelled at his men to rush from their horses into the grass. He knew. What did you do? In the next instant, a powerful Indian bow and gun followed, but no one was hurt. Surprisingly, even the Rangers' horses remained intact. The Indians attacked. The Rangers used Winchesters, and at that time these rifles had the effect of impact like machine guns. The attacking Indian line was scattered. Overwhelmed by the Texans' firepower, the warriors retreated up the slope and regrouped. Their next 3 attacks were also repulsed. The Texans' Winchesters were smoking. In the Indian ranks there was only one dead, several wounded warriors, and several wounded horses. They went to the trick. Wrapped in buffalo skins and wearing a headdress of a horned buffalo, an Indian crept up to the herd of Rangers and tried to frighten him off. Ranger Judson Willowite opened fire and saved the day. By that time, the battle had been going on for almost an hour and a half, and the sun was sinking lower and lower. Sergeant Cobb realized that he had been incredibly lucky up to this point, and he ordered his men to remount and take up a new position on the hillside that rose to the northwest of the low in their rear. He probably hoped that by forcing the enemy to attack uphill against the sun, he could blind them. With continuous fire, the Texans mounted their horses again and began to retreat. The Indians thought the enemy was running. Ranger Gus Hasrunt was at the rear of the group when he saw a warrior approaching him with a spear in his hand. Turning in the saddle, he fired from the Winchester, and the warrior fell dead from the horse. But the Rangers were again surrounded. Many of them were wounded. 16-year-old Ranger Billy Sorrell was seriously wounded, continued to shoot back because of his dead horse, but lost consciousness. Seeing this as an omen of victory, Oscahorse gathered his Comanches and led them on a new attack. He was blown away by a volley of Winchesters. The leader fell from his saddle, dead, before hitting the ground. The lead now passed to the Kiowa chief Satanka, who rode across the short front, urging the warriors to launch another attack. Sergeant Cobb formed a perimeter around the prone Sorrell and ordered them to dismount. They reloaded their rifles and froze in anticipation of the attack. Satank led his brave men in a frontal attack. He managed to drive up to the position of the Rangers, but the bullets from the Winchester knocked him out of the saddle. He died instantly. Both Indian leaders died. Many were killed, many wounded. They retreated. Sergeant Cobb led the short chase, but tired horses made it impossible. Returning to the battlefield, The Rangers scalped those dead warriors whose bodies they could find in the dim moonlight. Ranger Billy Sorrell survived, and this small but very revealing battle was called the Cobb Fight. The Rangers received a commendation from the governor of Texas,